I think that was part of one of my biggest struggles is trying to get back to work. I was a nurse beforehand, and I was working full time. Things were going great, and then this all of a sudden hit, and that was the biggest struggle. Because once I figured I was gonna, I was able to walk, I was able to do things. I'm gonna get back right into nursing and be able to go out without a problem. And what I found was just challenges, mostly that multitasking, and then through a long, a long haul, many ups and downs. I finally found that, I'm still able to work as a nurse, but I've been having to adapt and, what works, what doesn't work, the hours I can work, the time of day I can work, just having to figure all that out.
This is Recovery After Stroke with Bill Gassiamis, helping you go from where you are to where you'd rather be.
Bill Gassiamis here, and welcome to Recovery After Stroke. This is episode 66, and this is a very interesting episode. Today I have with me Chris and Cara Russo, who are both survivors of different types of brain injuries and who became married after they met in rehabilitation. Chris and Cara, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Cara, you and I met on Instagram because
Yes.
your Instagram label or handle is, but you look so normal.
Correct.
I get that a lot, so I really related to what you're saying. Can you tell me a little bit about what happened to you, and then we'll talk about what happened to Chris?
Sure. I was back up when I was 27, and I was having some health issues. I had lost most of my vision, and I was having headaches and a little bit of difficulty walking, and the doctors just couldn't figure out what was going on. They had some ideas, and one of the ideas was this disease called vasculitis. And the way that they would check for it would be what they do is a cerebral angiogram. So what that is they thread a catheter from your femoral artery, so in your thigh, all the way up to your brain. And once it's up in your brain, then they can shoot some dye in, and then your arteries can all light up and they can see what's going on. Well, during the procedure, the radiologist was having a difficult time navigating through my arteries. And she ended up going through the artery, straight through it, causing the stroke. So,
oh my Lord.
So right. So it's a known risk of having the procedure. It's less than a 1% chance. And it's kind of ironic. I remember joking with the doctor before that, 'cause you have to sign all the consent forms. And we were joking about, that's not going to happen. That never happens. And it ended up happening.
Wow. I remember having an angiogram. I remember having an angiogram, the whole process, and being, strapped down and all that kind of stuff. It was quite a interesting experience, but I had already experienced the bleed in the brain, so they probably couldn't make matters worse, could they, if I punctured another hole in my blood vessels? So what was the process for you after that? And by the way, were you awake during your angiogram? Because I was. So were you awake?
Yes, I was awake and actually feeling pretty good during it.
Even after they punctured the hole in the artery?
Yes, I don't really remember most of that.
They use some good drugs, right?
Yeah, I was on some pretty good medicine for that. So there's a bit of a blur in there. What I do remember is waking up in the post-op room, and I remember I was nauseous, I was vomiting, I was dizzy, headache, and I remember telling the nurse there, wow, I really just don't feel good. And she's like, oh, okay, it's fine, it's normal. I'll just let the doctor know. And they came back a few minutes later and they're like, oh yeah, they said it's normal, it's fine, we're gonna release you. So I got released, and I was actually headed over to see a different specialist at another hospital. And by the time I got to see that specialist, when I got into the room, I had actually passed out. And so they had to call 911 from there. So I went to that hospital's ER, and then in the course of things, I went through like 2 or 3 ERs before they finally admitted me for dehydration, not even thinking that I possibly had a stroke. They were just thinking it was dehydration for all the vomiting. And so I was admitted to the hospital, and about 3 days later, I was still vomiting, still had dizziness, still had headaches, still couldn't sit up, still couldn't do anything. And they finally were like, well, I guess we should probably figure out what's causing all of this. And so that's when they finally did a CT scan. And then they realized, whoops,
Wow.
there was the stroke.
So they didn't notice that they had done that during the procedure. It took
No.
them 4 days to work out that they had done something.
Yes, about 4 days. And the sad part was that I was in the hospital the entire time. So they had plenty of time to look at the symptoms and say, oh, this might be a stroke, but they just never put it together because I was 27 at the time. So they considered me young and not at risk for having a stroke. So they just completely brushed off all my symptoms. And
I find that staggering. Yeah. I find that staggering. You're in a hospital, you're with doctors who make mistakes from time to time, and I accept that they do, and that's okay. They're all good and normal. But nobody was able to go, this is a person who had a procedure into their brain. Now they feel unwell. Let's find out why. No one said that. Bill Gassiamas here. I just wanted to share with you this short message, and then it's back to the interview. Now, if you or someone you know has experienced a stroke and are in recovery, you'll know what a scary and confusing time it can be. You're likely to have a lot of questions going through your mind, like how long will it take to recover? Will I actually recover? What things should I avoid in case I make matters worse? Doctors will explain these things to you, but obviously because you've never had a stroke before, you may not know what question to ask. If this is you, you may be missing out on doing the things that could help speed up your recovery. If you're finding yourself in that situation, stop worrying and head to recoveryafterstroke.com where you can download a guide that will help you. It's called 7 Questions to Ask Your Doctor About Your Stroke. These are the 7 questions that I wished I had asked when I was recovering from my stroke. They'll not only help you better understand your condition, they'll help you take a more active role in your recovery. Head to the website now, recoveryafterstroke.com, and download the guide. It's free.
It seems so simple now. But yeah, they just weren't getting it. They just weren't connecting it. And I wasn't in a state to put it together.
Yeah, of course you were.
I was actually really relieved when after they did the CT and it came back, oh, you had a stroke, because I was starting to think, my God, what the heck is wrong with me? I can't figure out where I am in space. I can't sit up. I was like, what is going on with me? So when they actually said that, yeah, you had a stroke, I was like, oh, woohoo, they found something.
Yeah, it's funny how we need to know what it is that we're struggling with so that we can label it for some reason. And then, I don't know, it's probably like ground zero. It's a day, it's like the start of going forward. Like you know where you're at, and let's go forward from there, even if it's a terrible diagnosis.
Absolutely. And I think anyone who's struggled with trying to get a diagnosis, and at the time, just to put it in perspective, I was going through some other symptoms with I had lost my eyesight, with the headaches and all that, and they weren't able to come up with a diagnosis. I was going through test and not coming up with one. So for them to actually come back and say, oh yeah, we found something, I actually was pretty happy about it.
Yeah.
Until I realized, oh, you guys completely missed a stroke, and you could have given me TPA to stop it, but yeah.
Wow. Chris, what happened to you?
Oh, well, I got really sick. I thought I had mono, sore throat, neck ache, backache, that kind of thing. Went to the doctor, gave me amoxicillin, went through the week course of it, getting worse, back to the doctor again, gave me more amoxicillin. The next week, go back in again, did more blood work that time, another throat culture, more amoxicillin. Apparently, on the 4th week, I went back in and got another bottle of amoxicillin, which I don't remember at all whatsoever getting. And the following day after I got that, and I was driving around myself, by the way, because I was fine, I was 20 years old and fine, good health. And so let's see, the next morning, my mom came to check on me. I was living at home, thank God. And she said I didn't know who she was. And then she asked me, do you know what your name is and what year it is? She said I look like terrified because I had no idea who I was, who she is, anything at all. And 12 hours later in the hospital, they were going to release me from the ER because my blood work came back fine. And my dad threw a fit and, yelled the whole who's in charge here kind of thing. Because he asked the nurse how things were going with me because I was there for 12 hours. No fluids were given to me, nothing really at all. They just put a catheter in me and sent me on my way. In the corner room, my dad said. And so he was like kind of freaking out a little bit. He saw my urine was turning brown. And he's like, that's not a good sign.
Your what was turning brown?
My urine was turning brown in the catheter bag. And I was like, that's not a good sign. I'm not a doctor, but I don't think that looks good. And he told a nurse about that. And the nurse said he was apparently not very competent, and so he's like, yeah, his blood work came back fine. They're going to release him soon. Yeah, so that's a fun thing to hear. My dad said, he's like, he's a vegetable, does not know who anybody is, does not know his own name, and you said he's fine. And so the head doctor overheard my dad yelling and ran up and said, where's your son? I've not seen this case at all. And it's like, he's on a door in that corner. And she went in there and apparently right away said, get me in the ICU, do a lumbar puncture, do an MRI, this, and this. She saw some signs of meningitis, possibly. And they did the lumbar puncture, and it came back that meningitis and encephalitis. So it's a good double whammy of illnesses that usually leave you pretty paralyzed. They told my parents I was definitely going to be in a wheelchair when I left. If not a bed, it was bad.
Yeah. And
so my parents arranged my bedroom, made it all wheelchair accessible. And so my mom, I was in ICU for over a month. And so the social worker came in one day to tell my mom, to check, see if they prepared for me. And mom said, yeah, we made this room wheelchair accessible. It's all, our house is one story. We already did all this and that. We have a shower chair. We have things like that. And the social worker said, yeah, that's great, but he might not make it out of here. And my mom she said, I felt myself turn red and very angry. She said almost Hulk-like. And said, my son will not die before me. And the social worker just kind of said, oh, okay, and backed out of the room slowly. And
so tell me,
they sent me off to a rehab center where they should have sent her, but she got hidden off on the side. And a month and a half later, I walked out of there.
Wow, that's good to hear, man.
I shocked everybody there too, because they all thought I was never going to walk again also. So
good work.
Yeah.
Good work. Let's go back a little bit.
Yeah.
What's meningitis and what's encephalitis?
Meningitis is the illness that attacks the outside lining of your brain, the meninges. And encephalitis is actually what West Nile is. It's the West Nile encephalitis virus. And so they didn't know what strand it was. So that actually goes inside your brain, eats away whatever parts it feels like eating away.
Wow.
And usually takes a lot of stuff with it. So
you don't muck
and
around.
There's really no good medicines for it either because I had the viral version of everything. So yeah, so they just had to wait it out and hope it didn't do too much damage. So that's fun and scary to know about these days. Yeah.
So when you went through the process of dealing with the encephalitis and the meningitis, what were you left with that you had to recover from?
I had really bad short-term memory issues. Like I would meet somebody and a second later forget their name, stuff like that, and just I don't know what else did I go through.
I think the speech.
Yeah, the speech also. I still talk too fast when I get excited, and people don't understand me very well. Sorry about that if that's happening here at all. Just that kind of stuff. Nothing too. I'm really, really lucky.
Yeah. So no visual problems, no inability to walk, no loss of function from the hands or anything like that?
No. They were worried about that, but no.
Man, that is excellent. That's such a good outcome.
Yeah, yeah. We've been called a miracle couple on many occasions.
Well, I'm going to call you the dynamic duo.
I like that, by the way. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's way better than the miracle couple. The dynamic duo, you guys are doing amazing things. So, Cara, tell me about what you had to deal with after they finally discovered what your challenge was. And did you have deficits that you had to recover from? What was going on there?
Sure. So mine was, I think I touched a little bit how they missed my stroke, and there was a little bit of a little bit of malpractice issues going on there. So what they did is once they discovered the stroke, I think there was a little bit of a cover up. They didn't really go into how big the stroke was or what exactly happened. I think they tried to shove me in a corner and minimize everything that was happening. And they said, "Oh, you had a stroke. You're young. You'll be fine. Boom. Send you. We'll release you." So I didn't have. I had to learn how to walk again. And I had obviously I was still having my issues with my vision. So I had that. I had a little bit of speech issues. I had my big thing was balance and dizziness because my stroke affected my cerebellum. So I had a lot of spatial issues as well, meaning I didn't really know where I was in a room. So, I would get the input that I'd be sitting in the middle of the room where I was laying in bed, but then my brain would tell me that I'm up on the ceiling. So I had a lot of strange things like that to try to work with and figure out where I was. So just a lot of PT, a lot of speech therapy, a lot of occupational therapy. Am I moving around?
You're good.
Yeah.
No swivel chairs for you
Sorry.
anymore.
Sorry. So that was a few months of that, about 6 months or so, and I learned how to walk again, learn how to put everything together, trying to figure out. And actually, I think that was one of the big things is trying to figure out what my challenges were. Once I got over the physical problems with walking and being able to. I have a hard time with picking up things and grabbing things correctly. Sometimes I'll go to reach for things. I'm not, I don't pick it up correctly. I miss things. So I think once I got through the physical things, going through, and I think the surprises were like things like learning how to multitask again, and learning that loud noises are not good for me, crowds are not good for me, things that I didn't realize that I would be affected by. I think those, and I think you have some. Yeah. I think that was you get told you have something, you have a stroke or you have this illness, and they focus on physical issues, and they don't tell you about all the other things that you'll find out. Yes.
Yeah,
getting tired as hell.
Yeah.
At 1 p.m.
Yeah, the fatigue and yes, you're going to be sleeping all the time. You're going to be tired for no reason, and yeah.
Yeah, well, you're tired for a reason. The reason is your brain's healing, and it's trying to keep up with the body, and it's trying to do all the normal tasks, but it's obviously struggling to do all the normal tasks plus heal from being injured. So it sounds like you guys had a lot of similarities in what you experienced. Before we get to those similarities, because that's what I want to talk about, because they're different conditions, but what people don't realize is that neurological conditions often create the same symptoms for people who got there from a different path. But how did you two crazy kids meet?
What you do?
So we actually met in therapy, or what I lovingly call rehab. We met in rehab.
Yes.
Yep. And then this is where people, whenever I say that, people always look at us and they kind of look us up and down and they try to figure out what rehab it was. and then after a few seconds, I am like, oh yes, we met in speech therapy. So, so there was a group they had put together. All this happened at the same hospital, and they had put together a group for young brain injury survivors, and there were like 5 or 6 of us. Four. Yeah, something like that. And that's how we met. And we've been.
I walked in the room and saw her and just knew right away I was gonna marry her. Like, no joke, just right away. Yeah. I was 21 years old too. I was 21 years old, and I'm like, okay, like that's it. Like, it was done.
I hit the jackpot. Yeah. Job done.
Yeah. Yeah, putting she in her mouth, I'm like, okay, I think, yeah, I was done.
Yep. Same thing for me as well.
How old were you, Cara?
I was 27 when I had my stroke, but I was still in speech therapy. I was 29, 30?
Yeah, I met her. She's just turned 30 when I met her. She's 29. And I was 21, and yeah. But,
hey, that was big, brave thoughts for you,
right? I was like, she's just, yeah. No, that was it. I'm telling you, I was done.
I like it. Well done, man. Like he's thought, I can't speak. I'm in therapy. Something wrong with my brain. Like I don't know what's happening in the world, but I'm going to marry this girl. Beautiful.
Exactly. Yeah. No joke. Yeah.
I love it, man. Well done. And you achieved your goal. Congratulations.
I did.
Well
A
done.
couple years later, we got married. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so good to hear. So tell me a little bit about the similarities of what you guys experienced. And you know what's good about you two meeting and getting together and having a brain injury, both having a brain injury? What's good about that is you understand what is going on for each other and it's not foreign. And one of the things I say is like nobody ever understands me, but of course the only way they're going to understand me is if they're unwell, and I don't want them to be unwell, and there's no point in that, of course. But you guys were already unwell. So tell me about the similarities.
So many. I think so many. The fatigue.
The crowd thing. We both hate crowds, loud, especially loud ones. Like it's just a lot in the brain. You understand that, I'm sure. When it just becomes too much, and we can kind of look at each other, and I can look at her and I can tell right away how she's doing. So look at the eyes, and I'm like, let's go. And she's like, because she won't speak up, because she's always fine. I'm like, you're not good. Let's go, like that. So.
Yeah. And I think the helping, I think just recognizing when one is struggling. So if you're, so he knows my signals when I'm getting overwhelmed, over fatigued, and he picks up on those, and he can say, nope, gotta get out of here. We're gonna do a rest day today, or we're not doing anything. And the same with him. We'd be like, wake up, and are we doing anything? Nope. Or it's yes, we're gonna take advantage of this, and we're gonna go out for a drive, or
Yeah, that's really good. So I remember early on, I used to have, we'd make plans to go somewhere and do something. And I would say, well, today I'm feeling great. Let's go and do something. And then we'd get there and then I'd be feeling terrible because I don't know what happened. Something changed in the time that I decided that we're going to do something until the time we got there. And then it was kind of like I was a bit of a bummer to be around at that time. But then other times when I said, don't make any plans for today, we're not doing anything, I'm just going to flake it on the couch. And then I would say, hey, actually, I'm feeling really good. Let's go and do something. And I'd be like, I thought we weren't doing anything. And it's like, well, we are now. I'm feeling great. Let's make the most of this, And I could spend hours and way longer than I thought being able to be out and about and exercising by walking and by being around people and by being in crowds. So I had these very strange experiences where what I thought often didn't happen. And it was challenging for my wife because she doesn't get it. Like before that, it was we're either on or we're off. But you guys have this beautiful thing where you understand each other and you can both really appreciate doing nothing for a day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So what's it like? What's it like when you both have fatigued and stuff needs to be done? I know that sometimes I'll ask her, I'll say, look, I'm completely spent. Can you do X for me? And she'll jump in and help out. But what do you guys do? Or what's that like? It sounds really strange, but I'm finding this extremely fascinating. I don't even know what questions to ask.
I don't know that we've ever had an issue because we both, understand if I know he's not feeling well, I'll jump in and do something. If he's not doing well, or
usually one of us is okay enough to get stuff done.
I don't know if we've ever both been down for the count together.
Okay.
Which that won't happen.
Yeah, thanks. Lynn says thank you for that. To knock out some wood or something. That's gonna happen. Thank you.
It's not gonna happen, but I made an assumption that maybe it already has. And it might just be a timing thing. It's nothing. Like, forget it. Pretend I never said it.
Yeah, you didn't. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, never heard it.
Yeah. So what do you guys do? What do you guys do day to day? Both working?
Oh, good question.
That is a good question.
So that was, I think that was part of one of my biggest struggles is trying to get back to work. I was a nurse beforehand, And I was working full time. Things were going great. And then this all of a sudden hit. And that was the biggest struggle, because once I figured I was going to, I was able to walk, I was able to do things, I'm going to get back right into nursing and be able to go out without a problem. And what I found was just challenges, mostly that multitasking, and through a long, a long haul, many ups and downs, I finally found that, I'm still able to work as a nurse, but I've been having to adapt and, what works, what doesn't work, the hours I can work, the time of day I can work, just having to figure all that out. So I'm able to work now. What I do is I go to patients' homes and I do some education. So patients who have chronic conditions, I'm able to sit down with them and teach them all about it. Hopefully get them a little bit more comfortable with the direction they're going, their healthcare plan, all that kind of stuff. So it's a good mix for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I finally found.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. It sounds like it's really supportive of your health and well-being, because of course shift work wouldn't work for you, would it?
No, I found that out. That's not good. It doesn't work well for me. It doesn't work well for me. I get overwhelmed, overloaded, and then I had another incident where I had another stroke, actually. So I learned that one the hard way.
You had another stroke?
So yeah. I did. I was actually at work, ironically. That's a good story too. Yeah, I was at work and
Tell me that story.
Yeah. So I was at work and I was actually talking to a patient, and then all of a sudden, this word vomit, and I couldn't talk, couldn't do anything, and I had to have another nurse come in and kind of take over. And then, a few seconds later, I'm really feeling dizzy again, and boom, I pass out on the floor. So they had to call 911 again for us to get our ambulance over, and took me to the hospital, same hospital where I had the first one. And which ironically is now our local stroke center. So, so I get to the emergency room and they know my symptoms and they do a CAT scan, and the doctor comes back and says, "Oh, everything looks okay." Thankfully, Chris was there and he looked at the doctor and he's like, "So everything looks okay, including the previous stroke?" And the doctor looked at him like, "What stroke?"
"She's too young."
Yeah.
Those were his words.
So once again, he had to, he got the too young. And so, of course, the doctor had to go back and look at the scan. He's like, "Oh, yeah, well, I saw that. I saw that from both." Yeah.
I meant it was fine from the previous stroke. I'm like, don't try to lie. I know what you said. You didn't look at her scan because she looks pretty and she's 32 years old or whatever. I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, just all bad.
Wow. What were the after effects of that second episode?
So that one really affected my speech. So I had to back in speech therapy, back with my good friends.
Yeah.
So back not working again for a few months, and then had to change again what I was doing for work. And
Wow. You guys are amazing. So Chris, what do you do for work? How did you navigate being 21? And then I imagine you hadn't really sorted yourself out at 21 yet.
I was already set. Yeah, I already had family business, actually. Started working when I was about 12, 13 years old.
Oh, slave labor.
Yeah, pretty much. And so I was doing that. I was making a lot of money, actually, before I got sick, because we had sold our store and I was running the business and for the people that bought it, and I was doing really good for myself, and that all went away. But
yeah, right, okay. So then how long did it take you to get back on your feet and then overcome what you were experiencing and then move back into something that resembled being independent and work again?
About a year, give or take, a little over a year. Back to be, yeah.
And did you move into a different area of work?
I actually bought my old competitor's business that I grew up hating because he was, and turned that around and got that,
Nice, man. These guys.
And then sold that off, and that's been gone, and had random jobs here and there, and we're having fun. It's working.
Okay.
We're doing good. Yeah.
Awesome. So you guys were able to really get through this, still able to achieve a fair amount of things that you needed to do, able to buy a business, sell a business. You're able to just continue on the process after you've been unwell for a little bit. Seems like there was a period of time to heal, recover. You pay attention to your body, you pay attention to your needs, and then you kind of regroup and then you move on.
Yeah.
There you go. That's our story.
There you go. The end.
And here we are.
Like 13 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I just celebrated my 15-year anniversary for my stroke. And it's people will ask me, oh, 15 years, aren't you completely recovered? Isn't everything all better? And so what I tell people, and I spend a lot of time educating my friends or family members, is that I think it's a lifelong process when you've had any type of stroke or brain injury or anything. I think you're always learning, especially when you're so young and you have it. You're always adapting and relearning things and having to adjust.
Yeah. But you look so good. You look so
You
normal.
look so normal.
Now, tell me a little bit about, but you look so normal.
That you mean?
Yeah.
That's it. Hold it up, and a little bit further back. That's it, by Chris and Cara Russo. Awesome. Tell me about how you guys come about to write a book.
Oh, do you want to just?
I think people, when we would meet people, we're always together. That's
Our issue.
Yeah, we're always together, and people would always ask, "How did you meet? What's your story?" And then then we go into our story. Then people just kind of lock into us, and they're a little bit, a little fascinated or really interested. So we start telling it, and then we started hearing, "Oh, you should write a book. You should do something." And we're like, "Oh, okay." So we just decided to write down our stories, and because we would get, "Oh, you went through so much, but you guys look so good. You must not have any other issues
always,
right now."
But you look so normal. You had a stroke. But you had nothing. But it's always, but you look so normal. And it's just, that's one of those things you hate to hear constantly. It's like, I fought to look normal. Just acknowledge that. And
I mean, it's hard because you want to look normal and you want to hear that, but then you also want to acknowledge there's a lot of other stuff going on up in the brain and your body that's still healing. And
the invisible disability stuff. It's something that I've become fascinated in. I just completed a couple of weekends of doing a program where we were learning about how to model the behaviors of people that we wanted to replicate. So in the corporate world, they'll model leadership and they'll model all these things, but I want to model stroke survivors and the ones who can say that stroke was the worst thing that happened to them, but at some point it moved to the best thing that happened to them, regardless of the deficits and the challenges that they live with every day, right? And I say that, and the reason I say this is because I come from the point of it was a massive growth opportunity for me. So I know other people can't say that yet, and that's okay. I don't have an issue with that. So what we're trying to do is model the behaviors of how people go from that to being able to say those types of words. And I also want to model people that are considered to be the best type of, the best therapists in the community, who are the best occupational therapists or the best speech therapists, etc., so that we can learn about that. And that's the challenge, is the invisible disability conversation is a massive one. And I want to get people to that point where they look at somebody and looking normal shouldn't be the trigger that says everything's all right with that person. We hear about the challenges that people face with mental illness, and everyone saying, well, you can't tell. He looks great, but he acts like a bit of a crazy person sometimes. We want to get the message across that that everyone is going through their own challenge in life somewhere, somehow. And just because they acted out a certain way doesn't mean that they are nasty or they are rude or whatever. There's probably something else going on that triggered that response. So I also met a gentleman in that course who was talking about how they want to make transportation accessible. Here in Melbourne, our transportation system's amazing. If you're in a wheelchair, you can roll into any one of our buses, into our trains, and we have trams, and you can take those and you can go almost anywhere in the city, anywhere at
That's
all.
cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. One of the things they don't do, though, is they don't talk about the invisible disabilities, like the challenges that people face with lighting after a neurological condition. Some lighting causes massive problems for people. They also don't talk about noise and the impact that that has. They don't talk about how crowded buses and trains make people feel. So we're kind of starting this discussion about invisible disability. Does your book do that? Does it shine a light on the invisible side of encephalitis and stroke?
Oh yeah.
It does. We're actually working on a second one to really go into more depth. We kind of touch on it a little bit, just to make people aware that, and I think to also educate caregivers, just friends, family, and the healthcare professional community as well. I think a lot of times healthcare professionals, you go in the hospital, you're going to rehab, and all they focus on is the physical, which is fine. Both need to be addressed, but you can see the physical, and that's easy to look at and say, okay, we've gone from here to here, we've made progress, you're good to go. But the psychological, the noises, the overstimulation, all of that, would have been so helpful getting discharged from the hospital, knowing, okay, this might be hard for you, or this might be difficult, all the things that you don't think about. It took me 13, 14 years to get neuropsych testing done after the stroke. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I really had a tough recovery. I had a tough recovery, but I did with what I had. But I just, that's kind of one of our missions as well, is we would love to get the healthcare community to get that really addressed and looked at for people who have just had fresh injuries, and to get them going down that right path, get them to that neuropsych testing, get them, I can't even tell you how helpful that would have been to have been, just that one piece of information. Yeah, crowds are going to be hard. Voices are going to be hard. That would have saved years and years of frustration.
Practice that was not good.
Yeah, I went from job to job to job and struggling through social situations, and that would have been so helpful to just been given that piece of information.
Yeah, if you're somebody who's had a brain injury and you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube, and you haven't had a neuropsychological evaluation or assessment, go and see a neuropsychologist. I was told by my psychiatrist to go and have a neuropsychological assessment. And when I booked one in, I didn't realize it was going to take 9 months to see that person on the public system here in Australia. But I would happily have paid up front to see one in a week. But I didn't have the brain capacity to comprehend that. So I waited, and by the time I got there was very few deficits. The deficits had started to go away that first time, So that was strange. So 14 years to go and see a neuropsych. Chris, did you go and see somebody like that, a neuropsych?
No.
Yeah.
No.
It seems kind of really important step, I think, doesn't it? Because it's good to know where you're going to struggle, and it's good for your parents and your family, friends to know these are the areas they're going to struggle, and this is how you can support them.
Good. So even though you know what area you might have been affected by the stroke, you may not have. So mine was in the cerebellum. I should have only had problems with balance and movement, dizziness, that type of thing. But when I was showing up with problems with speech and memory and processing, friends and my parents were like, what's going on? Why is this happening? This shouldn't be a part of that. So yeah.
A couple extra things that you always get that are not typical of the area of the brain that's been injured. So did you guys have any other physical challenges that you had to overcome or still dealing with? I've got numbness on the left side. Do you guys have any of those strange types of things?
I do. I have weird numbness, tingling, weird sensations that will happen on one side of my my brain. I have a lot of weird eye movements, which is why
her eyes tend to go a little, haywire here and there. She's going to warn you ahead of time of this video, but she didn't. That they might, if they go a little crazy, just don't worry about it.
Yeah. that's just part of me. So eye movement problems, and then headaches. Anything really. When I get fatigued is when things start to kick in. Yeah.
How do you deal with fatigue, Chris? Do you go through that process now, or are you?
Yeah, I deal with it.
I think we have our moments where we realize where a day is going to be. Yeah, we're going to sit and we're going to watch Netflix all day.
We do that.
Or we're going to.
We had one of those days last week. We didn't do anything. I mean,
yeah. And we're very good with our calendars, planning things out. If we know something big is coming up, like an airline trip, flight or something.
I make her rest the whole day beforehand.
Right. We know we know how to schedule. We're very good about scheduling things and yeah.
Yeah, wow. Cool. Tell me about the book and how it's been received and the type of people that have bought it, and are there any amazing stories that you've had people contact you about?
We've had some people who have reached out to us, both brain injury survivors and non-brain injury survivors. So people who may have been caregivers or friends of brain injuries, or even people who've had chronic conditions, autoimmune conditions, because I talk about
her lupus and
so I talk about that a little bit, and so we've had a really good reception. We've been really happy. Really. It's amazing to hear some of the stories of what other people go through. There's similarities and there's so many differences as well that you can bond with people.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Did you say her lupus, Chris?
Yeah, she has lupus.
Okay. There is a massive connection between stroke and lupus, right?
Yes.
Can you shed some light on that?
Sorry. So my first stroke was what they call not a natural stroke. It was caused all purely by the doctors. My second stroke was probably related to lupus vasculitis, and I was at a greater risk because I'd already had a stroke. So yeah.
So what does what does lupus do, and what is lupus vasculitis? What does that cause?
So with lupus and vasculitis, they're both autoimmune diseases. Vasculitis can affect it's just a generic, it can affect any of your blood vessels. So it can attack anywhere. When I get vasculitis, I tend to get bruising, I get rashing, and I get, horrible leg cramping, that type of thing.
Is it a restriction? Is it a restriction of the blood vessels, vasculitis? What happens?
Yes. So so when you have an attack, your immune system is just on overdrive, like other autoimmune diseases. And what happens is your blood vessels they constrict, and so you're not getting that blood flow. So depending on where it can attack, people may have issues with lungs or kidneys, or you just never know.
Okay. And then lupus, what does that do?
So lupus is an autoimmune condition as well. And for me, my trigger is sun. A lot of people with lupus can't be out in the sun. And you're almost allergic to the sun. So when I'm out in the sun, I get rashes, I get fatigue, I get joint pain, muscle pain. And sometimes it's a little bit hard to try to figure out if I have a new pain. Is it lupus? Is it vasculitis? Is it old stuff from my stroke acting up? So that's part of the fun as well.
And
challenge.
Doctors like to pass the buck a lot too.
Yeah.
Neurologists, go see your rheumatologist. Rheumatologist, go see your neurologist. The circle continues because they both don't want to deal with it, so they pass it off as something else. And
yeah. You do really well living in England, where there's hardly no sun.
I would. We should move.
Let's move. All right.
Wow. So you guys have got a full book of stuff that you've got to overcome and deal with. And you know what? You sound like normal people. Most normal people have stuff to deal with, right? And stuff to overcome.
Yeah. Crazy.
I just love your attitude. I just love the way that you guys go about overcoming all the challenges that you need to overcome. Smiling, laughing about it, doing crazy things.
Yeah.
Right. It's either you can be negative and be sad about what happened, or, which, I mean, there are days, yeah, absolutely,
There
where,
was days.
yeah, always days where you're like, oh, this. But you have to make that conscious choice of, say, I'm going to be positive and I'm going to make the best of this. You're not going to change that you had a stroke or brain injury. So you just got to make the best and go with it.
Yeah. And I love how you then have turned that into something positive and created a book out of that, and sharing your story in hopes that other people will be able to relate, feel like they can reach out or feel understood, or, learn something from that for carers and for people that are going through something similar. Is it important to have purpose?
Yes.
How important
Absolutely.
is having purpose? What would be different if you didn't write the book?
I think writing the book gave us goals, and then put it in there in concrete. This is what we want to do, and it made us realize, yeah, we had our stuff happened. It was bad. Shouldn't have happened, but you got to move on, go forward. I think from the type of nursing that I do now, going out to patients' homes and spending that time educating people with chronic conditions, I think we both talked about this. We would love to be able to have some kind of stroke, chronic condition, management, take it to the hospitals and have people where they where they get, when they're finally discharged, or fresh injury, fresh
Here's
survivors.
a booklet. Yeah,
Yeah.
like this might run into these problems, like that kind of.
Right. So we would love to do something like that, get people, make sure, because it's so overwhelming in the beginning. You don't know what to do. You're confused. So many things going on, and to be able to help people kind of put them on the right path or get them going, help them know what kind of questions to ask their doctors and that type of thing. Yeah.
What kind of things, Chris, do you think that your parents would have loved to know at that time?
Oh, that they're not alone, and that other parents are going through such things. And I don't know, because mine was scary as hell. I'm not gonna lie. Like, that was, my dad started videotaping me my 4th day in the ICU, and he was telling me, Chris, like, the nurse one night, he's like, I'm not gonna lie, I broke down crying. Like, he's like, it was bad. The doctors were warning us that you might not make it out. They said never walk again. Like, I was thinking about how you would be not walking. He's like, you'd probably be able to step into the street. I'm like, probably, because I cannot stand that. It's bad, it's not good. And so he brought in his camera in the next day, his video camera, and started taping me. And the first scene was my mom asking me to blink my eyes. I was staring off in space for a good minute or so, till he finally turned the camera, got me to do something else. But I was not blinking my eyes. It was a vegetable. It was terrible. And so if they were, if they could talk to somebody back then, or somebody else, like, I don't know, it's just tough,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that's one of the biggest things. It's the unknown. When I came home, I was doing things that we didn't know if it was normal as part of the process of healing, or if things were getting worse. And my wife would often look at me and go, like, is that meant to be happening? What do we do? And I was like, well, most of the time it was, let's not do anything yet. Let's just see what happens. And then if it went too long, and for us too long was probably half an hour or an hour back then, we didn't really sit things out and wait to see what would happen for days or anything. We'd just go to the doctor, back to the hospital, and say, this is what he's presenting with, these are the challenges, what do we do? And usually it was just some more tests and confirm everything, and if it subsided or went away, then it was okay. But we didn't know how to navigate that either, and they never said to us, if you have any concerns, call or do any of that. It was also go home and we'll see you in 6 weeks. I don't know that they meant it literally in that don't come back for 6 weeks, but that's kind of how we took it. We took it as if we're done fixing you for now, and then see you in 6 weeks. And it was like, oh, we'll wait then. And yeah, it's not really the key thing. And I remember after my first stroke, the second time I had a bleed, which was 6 weeks later, and just before my appointment, I ignored it again for another half a day before I did anything about it, because I didn't have that confidence of, there probably is something wrong with me. Let me go back and tell them that something else is occurring. I was still in the zone of, oh yeah, it's probably nothing.
Yeah.
And when you've had a bleed in the brain, it shouldn't be thinking like that. If possible, people around you need to know that the way that they should be thinking is, if anything strange is happening, do something about it immediately. Just go to the doctor, go to the hospital, actually, not to the doctor. So it's been really interesting getting to know you guys and learning a little bit about your story. It's fascinating. You guys are definitely the dynamic duo.
Thank you. I like that name. That works.
I can see you wearing some capes and some masks. Maybe a mask with half a brain exposed or something like that.
Yeah, I like it.
I'll have to get on it. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, that would be fun.
I like.
Where can people find out more about you guys, and where can they get a copy of the book?
ButYouLookSoNormal.com.
ButYouLookSoNormal.com, our Instagram or Facebook, But You Look So Normal. Amazon for the book. Or you can certainly reach out to us, and we might be able to get it to you as well.
Yeah.
Excellent. We'll get all the links posted on the show notes, so anyone that wants to come across and find it, they can go there and they can get in touch with you guys as well. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, guys. Well done on overcoming all your challenges and continuing to have a smile on your face.
Yeah.
It's all fake.
Yeah, it's all
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Discover how to support your recovery after stroke. Go to recoveryafterstroke.com.